Hi, I'm Jessica, and when I'm not drinking all the coffee, watching Razorback sports, or hanging out with my family of boys, it's my passion to help elementary music teachers just like you find your unique teaching style. My goal with this podcast is to share helpful tips, strategies, and to give you the motivation you need to gain momentum in your teaching so you can continue being the music teacher rock star you already are. Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Today I want to talk about why your third year of teaching music or after your third year of teaching is the best. You may be listening to this and you're a first year music teacher, or you might be in your second year, or you might be in your third year right now. Or you might be listening to this and you might nod your head a little bit because you are past your third year of teaching, and you may find some, maybe not all, but some of what I'm saying has rung true for you. And so I'm going to just share my thoughts around this. And this is the same advice I give to teachers I mentor. In my Harmony membership, there's a Facebook group, and there is some mentorship I'm doing in there for some of the first year teachers. And this is the same advice I've given to them. Because if you're listening to this and you're a first year teacher, you're thinking, how in the world is just 2 years down the road going to be better than it is right now? And so we're going to talk about that today. The first thing I want to say is if you're a new teacher or if you are at a new school, because sometimes starting over at a new school can sometimes feel like your first year of teaching all over again, because you're learning the ropes and you're new and you're learning your students, they're learning you. So those feelings of overwhelm that you maybe felt in your very first year of teaching might still be there too. So let's talk to the first year teachers. If you're feeling overwhelmed, your first year is a learning curve. It feels like sometimes you're a sheep that's been thrown to the wolves. No, I'm not trying to call your students a bunch of wolves, but it's what it feels like. You're not with a mentor teacher anymore. You're not with a cooperating teacher. You're just in your own classroom, and everybody's looking at you as the professional, and you're thinking, wait a second, do they really know that I don't really know a lot of what I'm doing because this is my first year? And so it's really overwhelming. But here's what starts happening during year 2. You start having a little bit more of an idea of how you want to do things. You're getting a little bit more confident and comfortable. Your classroom management is starting to click a little bit. Is it ever going to be perfect? No, it's not going to be. You're going to still have hard days, and that's just the reality of it. But your students are also a little bit more comfortable with you. You have some professional development under your belt. You feel like your lessons are going a little bit smoother. Lesson planning is starting to go a little bit better. And so that's what starts happening during year 2. But during year 3, you're starting to come into your own. You're realizing that, yes, I'm a unique person. I'm a unique teacher. And you're really, really figuring out that teaching style. How do you want things to go in your classroom? What works in your classroom? And you're starting to figure it out a lot more during year 3 and as you continue on during year 4, 5, and on and on. But things are starting to feel like they're clicking a little bit better in your classroom. It's not so much of figuring out how to do things, but it's more about changing things up as you go. You're feeling a little bit more comfortable with, for instance, this lesson plan is not going the way I want it to, so you on the fly can change things up because you kind of have figured it out. You're more familiar with what you're teaching and how to teach, and so changing up those lesson plans as you go is not as overwhelming to you. You're not having to follow the paper from the beginning of the lesson to the end of class time, but you're able to start navigating a little bit better and knowing, oh, this would be a perfect folk dance to put in here, even though you didn't lesson plan for that, if that makes sense. There's going to be challenges and reasons that teaching is hard during year 3 and on, but you feel like you're beginning to feel better about your circumstances and how teaching is going. So I want to give a few more reasons for why year 3 and the years following it are so great. Okay, so like I already mentioned, you found your stride. You're not afraid to adapt lesson plans or to change things up on the fly. During year 1, you're honestly, this is the truth. I planned this, I'm teaching this, and I don't know how to adapt anything. if this lesson plan is not going great, I don't really know how to change it on the spot because this is what I planned. But as you get going and you're teaching a little bit more and a little bit longer, you're going to learn that if something's not working, you're going to learn kind of on the fly in your head. You're going to think, okay, I'm going to do this instead. Like, I'm going to do this body percussion activity right here instead of a movement activity because I know my students' needs and I can tell they're not ready to do the movement. So bam, we're going to do that right now. Or you're going to think, oh wait, I have that resource back there on my desk that would go, there's a lesson in there that would go perfect with this. I don't know why I didn't think of that when I was lesson planning. You're going to start noticing that it's easier to just pull things out of your brain quicker is what I'm trying to say. You're also going to learn to find the right mixture of lesson plans. And what I mean by that is during year 1 and probably still year 2, it's difficult to find the right balance of, let's say 45 minutes. That's the magic number for some reason. But during a 45-minute class period, how much of what am I supposed to do? And that's probably during year 1, you're struggling with that. So during year 3, you've kind of like found that mixture of the right amount of doing movement, instruments, singing, improvising, and everything else that comes into an elementary music classroom. When do you do technology? When are you going to have them do, the drums? All those different things that come into a music classroom, you're going to start learning the right balance of what to plan when. And it just is a matter of doing it. It's trial and error. It's getting in there and teaching so you can figure out what exactly you want to plan when and when to plug it in to each week you see your students. You're also going to be more familiar with your schedule. How often do you get your students? Okay, so I get them once every 3 days or do I get them once a week? And then you're going to be able to know how much exactly that you can do with those kids each time you see them. And it's not going to be as overwhelming to you because you're kind of more familiar with this schedule that may have caused overwhelm and a headache when you're just trying to figure it out. Because let's be honest, there's so much in the music teaching world that you can teach these kids. So it gets overwhelming looking at all these resources and all the things you've learned at professional development, which I've touched on this in previous episodes. It gets overwhelming sometimes because you want to cover everything. So you may be noticing that you're not able to get through everything because you don't see your students often enough. But when you're in year 3, you're able to, like I said earlier, adapt and adjust on the fly. But you're also able to know, okay, it's okay not to get through every single song and every single activity I've learned in every professional development or that I've seen in every single music teaching resource. It's okay to not get through everything because it's more about you learning what activities, what songs, what lessons work for your students. You are not going to be able to get through everything. It's just not possible. But the goal is to teach your students music. And you, by now, if you're at the same school, have learned your students and their needs and the way they learn best and what songs that will teach music the best to them. The next thing you are going to learn when you're in year 3 or on is you're going to know your students better. And your kids from 2 years ago now have had you for 2 full years. So they know the way you do things. They by now have learned your teaching style. They know what happens in the music classroom. They're aware of what your expectations are and your, procedures. And what's cool is when the new kids come to your school, that these students that have already had you for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever years, they'll be able to start helping the other students with what happens in your classroom. You're going to kind of see them without you even asking, or you maybe have some leaders in your class who, hey, there's a new student. Can you kind of show them the ropes of what happens in here? But you're going to notice they kind of take that responsibility on themselves without you even asking them to. And they are, kind of like little leaders helping these new students in the music classroom with what to expect. Or, hey, don't touch your instrument. She's going to take it away from you. Or, no, this is how we line up. Or, this is how we join a circle to do this folk dance. You're going to start seeing them take this responsibility on themselves, some of the leaders in your classroom. And it's really kind of cool to see that they're so used to your classroom and the way you do things that they're totally comfortable with acclimating the new kiddos. And then your relationship with your colleagues gets better. At least some of them. It's hard to reach everyone, okay? I'm just going to be honest with you. But your first year teaching, you're focused on teaching, obviously, lesson planning, implementing the lessons. And so sometimes those relationships with the other teachers in your building, the staff in your building, even your principal, even the other music teachers in your district, if you teach in a public school, it gets overwhelming because you're like, I can't check off every single thing off the, on this to-do list, on this box of everything I need to get done. I can't form a relationship with my colleagues too. So the advice, I know this episode's about year 3, but the advice I give to a lot of the new music teachers I mentor is write down what you're wanting to accomplish and try to only focus on one thing at a time. It's when you try to focus on all the things that it gets overwhelming and that you feel like you're not accomplishing anything. So when you get to year 3, this might be, I'm not saying ignore everybody in your building and to not try to get to know the other teachers until you enter year 3. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. But you might feel now that you have more of a handle on your teaching, you feel like classroom management is going a little bit better. You feel like you've found your stride and you're a lot more confident. You're, like with programs, I didn't even mention that, but with putting on your performances or programs or informances, you feel like you're a lot more confident in that and it's easier to plan them. So now year 3 might be the year you're shifting and focusing more on forming relationships with, obviously continuing with your students, but with the other colleagues and teachers and staff in your building. You're able to feel like, okay, they have invited me out to the Friday hangout time that they do. And I've never been able to because I feel like it's one more thing to do. But now you're able to do that. You feel like you're able to have more conversations during lunch because you're not as stressed out trying to get all the things done. You feel like during your plan time, if someone comes in to ask a question, or you're able to, go talk to another teacher when it's their plan time as well, or whatever the case may be, you feel like you're able to start having more relationships with your colleagues. So those were just some thoughts I had swirling through my brain because I know if you're a first year teacher, it's very overwhelming. If you're in year 2, you're feeling a little bit better, but I want to tell you to hang in there because once you get to year 3 and then past that even, if you're at the same school that is, it feels like things just start clicking. Everything just starts falling into place. All those puzzle pieces start coming together and you're starting to see the big picture of what you've been working towards, of how you've been trying to establish your classroom. Your students kind of know what to expect. Your teaching feels like it's becoming a lot more natural and you're falling into your own and you're really aware of how you want to teach the music in your classroom. So hang in there. I promise you, it gets better. Just hang in there and keep moving forward. Keep taking steps every day and keep showing up. Those feelings of overwhelm, like I said, write down what's causing it. What is making you feel overwhelmed? Are you trying to do way too many things? Your to-do list feels like it's just growing and you're never crossing anything off? Well, then prioritize that task list and say, what needs to get done first? And then go from there. There is a blog post that goes right along with this podcast episode that you can find in the show notes, or you can just head to the domesticmusician.com and you will find, if you click on the blog, it's the very top blog post, the one that's all about your 3rd year of teaching. So I hope you guys are having an amazing week and I will be back on next week. Thank you so much for listening in to the Elementary Music Teacher Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And while you're there, I would love for you to review the show and leave a rating on iTunes. To find out more about how I can help you gain momentum in your elementary music teaching career, head to thedomesticmusician.com where you'll find free downloads, courses, the blog, and so much more. Continue teaching music and never doubt the impact you're making each and every day in the lives of your students.